Hello and welcome to Take Me Through Your Day, a very exciting episode, our season 1 finale. This is essentially the co-creator of this podcast. I really spent a lot of time workshopping this with her because I was really wanted to do it and she was excited. She's a sex therapist. We cover a lot of ground in this. It's the first one I really get kind of invasive about background, and I really think you'll enjoy it. So, without further ado, a sex therapist, and as usual, if you want to get a hold of us, it's at TakeMeTYD on social media, and at TakeMeTYD at gmail.com. Enjoy the show.
Okay, I'm a licensed professional counselor, which people will say LPC. I'm also a certified sex therapist through ASECT, which is the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. And I work at a private practice where we treat people with multiple relationship issues. So it could be your individual therapy for relationships with yourself or with anybody around you, or couples therapy, anything like that, where I am a partner also. So I run the day-to-day operations, or help run the day-to-day operations clinically. And then the owner is out in San Diego.
Okay, so like any given day, is there like a set, like a list of tasks that you have to get into?
Not really administratively. We have a practice manager who manages all the office managers. Mm-hmm. And if there's any clinical issues, so my duty every day is to check my email and just respond to any questions. If the intake person has a question of fit where they have somebody calling in and they don't know who they would fit right with, then if she's really good, she knows everybody. We have 35 clinicians. She knows pretty much who will fit with who. But sometimes she'll contact me and say, I don't know what to do with this person. Because I'm a breast cancer survivor. So for example, yesterday she was desperately searching to find a clinician. And then she said, but this person's a breast cancer survivor, and I'm sorry, but I think she really needs to see you.
You're uniquely qualified.
Yes. And I said, of course. So I try to make time with survivors all the time. But going back to your question, the day-to-day, not very task, yes. Whoever comes in first of the office has to open up the office, turn on the music, because we have flute music that's supposed to be relaxing. My one office, we have a waterfall. So doing those kind of things, I'm usually the first one in. I see people pretty early. But I'm in 2 offices, 2 days a week at each office.
So you kind of all share the responsibilities of the general office.
Yes.
And everything. Okay.
Yes.
So aside from that, let's go into just seeing patients and stuff like that. Do you handle a certain amount of people a day? Do you kind of just spread things out along your week, or?
So I do. I would say on Tuesdays are my busiest day. I work from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. straight.
Wow.
So that was yesterday, and I saw every one of my people. I did have actually one cancellation, so I had an hour break, which is,
okay, that's
nice. I caught up on emails and things like that. But typically every hour of my time is filled because of my specialty. So even if I have cancellation, even on Friday I had a cancellation and I had 5 people that I texted and instantly got taken. So I could keep those hours, but we're contractors, so you only get paid for when
what
you
do.
Yeah.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I want to back up a little bit before we go through your day.
Okay.
And can you give me just the broad strokes of your background, from high school? Did you have in mind what you wanted to do with your life, and then just the path from high school on to now?
No. I did not really know. I actually I only applied at Pitt because my best friend said, hey, we're going to Pitt and we need a 4th roommate so we can get a suite, so you should apply. And I was like, okay.
Fair enough.
My mother wanted me to be an x-ray tech. She thought that would be a good idea. And with my grades, I probably would have been appropriate for that. I don't even know. I don't know if I would have did well at that. And then in college, I almost failed my first year. I was on academic probation at Pitt because I thought, a lot of my friends, that I could stay up all night and drink or do whatever and get A's in classes because that's what I saw people doing.
Yeah.
but I'm just not made for that. So then when I went on academic probation, I remember I went home for the weekend or something, and my parents said, if you fail out of Pitt, you're gonna owe, I think it was like $20,000, maybe $20,000, probably less. That was like 90,
Well, yeah,
97, 96, and I don't know if I was disillusioned. My dad was a printer. Like we had no money. I begged for them to get divorced so that I could get student loans or emancipate me. So I just remember going back there, and at the time I worked at the Gap, and I babysat her as a nanny and stuff. And my parents said, do you know how much work you're going to have to do at the Gap to pay for your 1 year of school and then continue to work at the Gap? And I was like, what are you talking about? And they said, look around you. Like, we don't come from money. So that kind of scared the shit out of me. And
as it should.
Which I guess a lot of people it doesn't, but it really terrified me, the idea of going home, because I was the first one to go to college. I didn't know what else. I didn't have a backup plan. There was nothing I wanted to do, and I didn't want to stay in Shaler and all this stuff. So anyways, I went to Pitt and asked them for they had a resource center, because I did notice going there when I was in classes that I'd be with people that they just seemed to know what they were doing study-wise, and I asked them, what are you doing? And they're highlighting books.
And what's the secret?
I would just highlight the whole book. I didn't know. So I went to the study center, and they helped me study, and I improved my grades so much that they wanted me to speak to other kids on academic probation. So now looking back, it's funny, because I was my first semester of sophomore year at Pitt, I spoke in the Cathedral of Learning in one of the bigger rooms to 400 students on academic probation. And in retrospect, I look back and I'm like, holy shit, I was such a dork. I looked like a dork. But I remember, because I'm a nervous public speaker anyway still, but it was terrifying. Mm-hmm. But at the end, I remember this one girl came up to me and she's like, that really helped me. That made a difference. And that feeling was heroin to me.
That's all it takes is one.
It's just one
person to be like, you really made a difference.
You made a difference just talking to me. And I was like, this is awesome. So, I was really undeclared of what I wanted to do in school. And at the time, Pitt, I think I liked psychology. I had gone to counseling, and I'd gone to therapy during, at Pitt at some points. So I liked that idea, but it seemed too outlandish for me. I wasn't smart enough. So I went for communication, because who knows what the hell that is.
Yeah, it's nice and broad, and you just get to talk to people.
So. And I think, who knows what that even, I don't even know. I still don't know what, and that's what the glory of this podcast is, that you get to find out what you do.
What's up with that? What's your,
So basically, if you go to school for communication, which on The Simpsons they say it's a phony major, is you can basically go to grad school. Yeah. So, and I had gone for because Pitt had a 5th year teaching degree, so I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a teacher. Everybody likes that schedule, which, they make good money and you get summers off and all that stuff. But I student taught at one school, the Falk School at Pitt, and I hated it so bad. I just could not stand talking to children all day. So then
it's a different demographic.
Yeah. So I got out of Pitt. It's just I'm just winding around it, because I minored in sign language. And the reason I did that, again, looking back at my laziness and efficiency, was every language at Pitt was every day of the week, except sign language. It was one day for 4 hours. So I could bang that out.
Knock it out and move on.
And I got an A+ in it. So I was like, this is great. So I ended up minoring in sign language. Now I know absolutely nothing. But I would take these, as soon as I graduated, I got this job as a social worker, just because this place needed some, it's one of these places where you did, I don't know.
Now this is something through the college, or is this just a separate job?
I applied for a job in a newspaper ad.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, so
it's so quaint. It's so quaint nowadays. I love it.
So back in the day, going through the want ads, applied for a job. The starting salary was $22,000, which was a gold mine for me. Mm-hmm. And I look back on it, and it was a great experience. I worked in every ghetto in Pittsburgh, the worst ghettos around. And And then I'd get called to these court cases a lot to interpret for sign language, which I wasn't an interpreter. So it was very odd. That's kind of how I got hired in that field, was somebody was intrigued that I knew sign language. So I worked in that. And then part of the place I worked, they had different, just like a lot of nonprofits in Pittsburgh, there was a lot of different areas. So there was a clinical kind of area, and it was called family-based. So I went into that field. So it was kind of like social work with a therapy aspect.
Well, what was that like for you? Like, what age are you at this point?
Oh my God, I was 21. Yeah, 21.
All right, and you're going into these rough neighborhoods.
Terrible.
Yeah,
just
what was that experience like? If you could touch on.
Well,
that for a second.
so I always think about. I had a 2-door Ford Explorer that my husband begged me not, at the time we were dating, and he said, this is the dumbest thing you could buy. And I bought it because I don't know why, I just wanted 2-door Explorers. They don't even sell them anymore.
Yeah.
Their air conditioning wasn't working, and I would drive through these projects with the windows up, because if I had the windows down, I was, 21, blonde, attractive, and somewhat not naive.
But you had the balls to go in there and be like, hey, I'm here.
Yeah, and
what's up?
the things people say to you, is insane. Like, I'd just be driving and just pouring sweat down my face, because if I had the window down, it'd be like, hey, you bitch, I'm going to bend you over and fuck you. You're like, oh, okay. And so I'd go from all these ghettos, and sometimes I would dial like 911 on my phone.
Oh, just
before
to
I got
be...
out. One time in like Northview Heights, I got boxed in, where, 2 cars pull up and they go on either side of me, in the front and back. And I pulled in, I had a truck, so I pulled in the grass and pulled around. But for the most part, the people you work with start sending out warnings. They know the social workers in the area.
Yeah.
So I was okay with it. But now, looking back, I didn't have GPS. I didn't have I had a cell phone, but it was... like
one of those old bricks or something.
Oh my God, it was terrible. And then we had, after the first year I was there, they got those Nextel Directs. Do you remember those? Mm-hmm. The walkie-talkies?
Yeah.
And that was crazy. It was good for safety. But I'll never forget, I was driving through Wilkinsburg during the day. I had just picked up, so I got kids for all kinds of reasons. So I'd get medical cases. If you're giving your kid Pepsi out of a bottle. Yeah. And your kid's overweight, I get them. I had a woman who was very proud to tell me that she was on Jenny Jones, which was a talk show.
I remember Jenny Jones.
Because her baby was Case of the Fat Baby. It was one of the Jenny Jones shows. Mm-hmm. And I went to the house, and she said, well, he cries if I don't give him pizza. And he was like 2. And he shouldn't be. He was like, and I know nothing about this stuff. I'm just like a college educated person that could just go in. So that was funny. But then this one, I'm driving through Wilkinsburg. During the day, I just picked up a client who was a diabetic. And that was something too that you would never do now, is you'd never drive kids around. But I would do that. What do you mean? I'd pick them up and drive them wherever. Like, it was just, if they had to go to an appointment, or if I was just taking them to the park to hang out. Like, I had clearances, but I just drive wherever. And so I picked her up, and we're waiting at a stop sign. And this kid comes flying down this hill on his bike and hits my car. And his face hits my window, and he just slides like a movie slowly down the window. And I freak out. I call the cops. I said, this kid hit my car. They're like, so you hit a kid with your car? I was like, no, a kid hit my car. They get there. The kid had already run away. And they're like, they don't use brakes down the hill. That'll teach them. Like, it was like so different than my experience in suburbia. But it was just kind of like a very unique situation. I had a guy who, so part of my job too is with people lost their parental rights, or were getting to the point of being completely terminated. So I had a guy who was and he hogtied and beat his child with a chain. Christ. It was terrible. Ugh. And I would have to go pick him up by myself and take him to supervised visits, where his daughter would wet herself when she would see him. Mm. And so then I'd have to report that she's afraid of him. So
well, I mean, at that point, like, how do you even get visitation if you've done something like that?
So the law, at the time, the law was like 3 strikes, you're out.
Oh.
So you have to really prove that you're really unfit, even though, and I think that I don't know if it was like witnessed or something like that. I mean, it's really blurry, but I just remember picking him up and thinking, I could get killed at any moment. Like, and just, it's like one of those things where you do whatever you do when you're young and you look back and you're like, oh my God, like, what was I thinking? Who trusted a 21-year-old to do that?
I imagine they would seek that out because the early 20-somethings would be naive enough to be like, yeah, I can handle it. That's a job. I can do that job.
Well, and we weren't CYF. We didn't work for Children, Youth, and Families. We were subcontractors of them. So,
okay.
And kind of spreads the liabilities around a little bit too. Yeah. And I'm sure that those jobs have changed just insanely since I did that. Because the driving kids around, that I don't think ever happens anymore. But I did a lot of things like that. Then I went into family-based where you had a partner, and it was a guy that I would go with, and he was a master's level, I was a bachelor's level, and that was more intense kind of therapy, but for really high intensity kind of.
Are these like office visits, or you go into that?
All in homes.
In homes, okay.
Yeah, so.
Still a little intense.
Well,
at least you have a partner at this point.
Yes, and my story is, this I am like watching what I say because I think like I don't want it to sound disrespectful, but
I get all that stuff out.
I'll just say all of it. You can whatever you think. I always joke to now when I work with people, that are very typical or going through like health issues. I'll say I used to hold my pee like a rock star. I knew where all the clean bathrooms were in the whole metropolitan area because I'd go from like Westmoreland County, Armstrong, and there's some backwoods places there, but I'd go into these homes where you couldn't even like hover over the toilet because they were gross. Yeah. Or I'd peg my pants because there was cockroaches. Ugh. Yeah, just like things like that. And I remember at the time, because I got married when I was 23, and I remember at the time, I can't remember what happened. I had some medical issue where I had to go get a sonogram, and they make you drink at the time they made me drink 60 ounces of water or something. Yeah. And the woman came out to get me and she said, there's no way that you drank all that water. And I said, yes, I did. And she said, no, you didn't. Because you don't look uncomfortable. And I said, I swear I did. Yeah. So we get there. She goes to do the sonogram. She's like, oh my God, you're full of water. I said, I told you. And she's like, how is that? I said, lady, I go into dirty houses for a living. I can hold my pee like a champ.
It's a talent.
It's a talent. Now it's not so much talent, but it's funny because I just remember that as one of those oh, my body has adapted to this too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean it was great experience and it makes me really appreciate where I am now, and I've done a bunch of other that was the big kind of telling job. Then I went to the family-based therapy, and then after that worked at a school that was a approved private school for kids. It was 120 kids with multiple issues. They had a lot of issues, and their school districts couldn't support them. So it was a behavior-based outpatient school. So each unit had a psychiatrist, and there was 5 adults in each room most of the time to 8 kids. Yeah. I had my teeth knocked out there.
What?
Yeah.
How did that go down?
So we had to do restraints a lot, and this one kid who was always, he was just a little shit, and he punched me in the face, and I was.
What age are we talking? What age is the kid?
He was 11, I'd say.
You could do some damage at 11.
11. Oh yeah. So I was, how old was I? I was 27, I think. 27 or 28. And he punched me in the face, and I just quickly grabbed him up and did a basket hold, which is a bear hug from behind. Yeah. And as I did that, he headbutted me in the teeth. And at the time, the CEO of the whole company of Wesley was giving a tour to the board of the board of directors, and they heard it. It sounded like a baseball bat.
Yeah, I bet.
And then it was just obviously a bloodbath. Yeah. So it was crazy timing because he saw it, and it was then I became this Oh my God, that was the girl who got her teeth out. So they essentially went backwards, not out. And then when I got up to the nurse, I pushed them forward and like almost felt them go back into a socket, which was crazy. But in retrospect, like it is better because I went to a dentist and they said that that's the best thing you could do because then the nerve started.
Well, so you still have your real teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But that's my last chance. That's what all my dentist has said that, like, if you get hit at all, you're done. I still have, like, hot coffee or in the cold, the wind.
A little sensitivity going on.
Yeah, it's still, apples and corn on the cob still are not, like, the best.
Yeah.
And for a year, I couldn't touch any of that stuff. And I'd look at that kid at lunch, and I'd think, he's just sitting there eating an apple. Sure. And then I look back, after that happened, and I went back to work. I only took off like 3 days or something. I went back to work, and I looked at his crisis plan, and I wrote it saying, don't hold him in a basket hold because he headbutts. So it was my fault, essentially, because I just reacted and restrained him instead of waiting. And that was kind of like a sign where I was like, okay, maybe I'm ready to leave this place. Like too many restraints, and restraints are never fun to be a part of, when you're doing
it sounds terrible for everybody.
Yeah, there'd be like 8 adults. We had guys that were 260 pounds, some of these like high schoolers. And when they would go down, I remember one kid, it was my job just to hold his wrists down, his one wrist, with both of my hands. And he was still, just bucking. And I can't imagine what police do. They can use, they're not using therapeutic force, which is a little bit different. They can use force, but it is very difficult. And then you feel, there's all these feelings attached to it. And you feel really bad because a lot of these people they're not criminals. So they're not doing it on purpose. They're just,
and at some level, it's not really their fault. It plays a huge part in like how you're raised and how you got handled.
Exactly. So and how people are intervening with you. So like I never got threatened by those kids because I knew that I wasn't in a power struggle with them. That's, I think, something is my advantage as a therapist now is I'm not intimidated by that because I'm not threatened by it. And I can see where people would get threatened and they want to prove a point, or they're just like, and they would say horrible things to you. Like I tell my kids all the time because they'll say, oh, this kid was so mean to the teacher. And I'm like, what did he say? Well, he said, shut up. I'm like, oh, shut up. Whoa. Whoa. We had kids, I remember being pregnant with my first one, and this kid coming up to me and he said, I'm going to cut your baby out of you.
Jesus.
And I was like, so we developed, me and a couple of my colleagues, we called it fine therapy. We would be like, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. Oh. And they'd be like, I'm going to sue you and take your house away. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And
that's a little bit more benign than
I'm gonna cut your baby. I'm gonna punch you in the stomach, and you're gonna miscarry. Like they would do very targeted, things.
They get under your skin. There's different degrees of that in any school.
And exactly. And as soon as you knew what your power was, so for me, like if I thought my ass was big or that my teeth were yellow, they're gonna target that and just exploit it. So you can't allow them to see your weakness, or if they see it, like you have to be ready to just be like, yeah, okay, I have a fat ass, whatever. And that, I think, really helped me work now, because when I every once in a while am around like a narcissistic man, and they'll say something like, you'd be really pretty if you didn't wear glasses. And
is a real patient saying this to you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jesus. Now, it doesn't happen a lot, but every once in a while, especially with couples, if somebody feels threatened in a relationship and they feel that I'm colluding in any way, that's what they'll be like, well, what would you know? Like, like those kind of things. And I could see where my instinct is to be like, well, fuck you. But really, I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. And that's when they say things like, somebody did say, I wear glasses all the time, but I wore my contacts to work. And this one guy said, you're just, you're not as pretty with your contacts in. And I said, okay, first of all, I didn't ask you. So do you feel like that's something that is valid for you to say to somebody? So I always use them as like teachable moments. Like, Would you
long
say
as you're
that?
getting
Yeah.
something from it, I mean.
Oh, yeah. One guy came in and out. He said, I see you're with child. And I said, no, I'm with chub. I think I was sitting a little bit chubby. I mean, I don't think I'm that chubby, but I was sitting like a little bit chubby. And he said, oh, I was just very, I said it because I was just very disappointed. I like you, and I would be disappointed if you're going to go on maternity leave.
Oh,
He said, well, I'm not.
Nice save, guy.
Yeah.
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 And all right, let's get back in because I really want to dive
Yeah.
into your job, and we're going into the background a lot. So
I know. I'm sorry.
you get your no, that's good.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So you get your teeth knocked in or out,
Yeah.
whatever, and you make a decision like, all right, it's probably time to think about a new path. So let's get us to present.
So I was in grad school at the time.
Okay.
There because so there's a big discrepancy with bachelor's degrees in psychology or counseling compared to master's degrees.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a bigger discrepancy with master's and licensure. So I was, with a bachelor's degree, I think I was topping out at my job at the time at like $28,000, like was my max. So with a master's, you could make like 40, and that was just insane to me. Like that was to be able to make 40,000 was great. So I went back for my master's because I worked at a school. I could do it at night, and I was able to do my internship there because it was a school, but it was clinical. So it was great for all of those things, and the experience was great. And I still stay in touch with a lot of people there. I try to poach people from there to come to our place. So once I got my master's, there's a time between when you get your master's and when you get your license. So you have to, first of all, like a regular master's degree is 48 credits. Okay, so but to get your license, you have to do a 60 credit master's degree, and then to get your license, you have to have two years post masters. And at the time I was there, 3,600 hours. Now it's 3,000 hours. So 3,600 hours of experience. So I quit that school and then went to a different service of theirs, what was called wraparound services. So I would go in as a master's. This is when I graduated my master's degree, and I would go into homes with kids with autism, which for working in homes is like glorious because autism is a neurological disorder. So yes, you could be in projects or you could be in $1 million homes. Yeah. And a vast majority of people that I worked with were just very nice people that had kids late in life, or they adopted, or, I mean, they really were interested in helping their kids. Yeah. So I would go in and help, there would be an in-home therapist who worked like 20 hours a week, and I worked like 3 hours a week with each case, and I would help them basically set up therapeutic curriculums. So I did that for, until I got my license. And then once I got my license, I was ecstatic to try private practice. And I just looked around online, and I found the place that I work now. I sent the owner, some interest, just kind of solicited her, and she met with me, which I was really surprised because it seemed fancy to me. It was like a nice place. And she took me on, and at the time there was 5 of us in one office. Now there's 4 offices and 35 people, something like that. So it's pretty cool. Like I've seen this evolution.
You got to grow with it.
Yeah, totally.
Now, was it initially a couple's?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, she started it as a licensed marriage and family therapist. So she was more training couples therapy.
Okay.
And I was nervous to start couples therapy, but the way she approached it was, you work with parents. What's the difference? They're just couples.
True, yeah.
And a lot of it is confidence. Like if you go in acting like you don't know what you're doing, then people are going to have doubt in you. Whereas I was just curious, and I still am curious. That's why I think he's my best asset as a therapist. Is I'm hard to offend, and I'm very curious. So I think that's a good combination. Besides like education and all that stuff. So that was what went into pivoted into sex therapy. Was I would see couples, and then I'd ask them questions about their sex life, and it was amazing to me how many people never talked about it. Yeah. And so then I got I tried to get interested or find out more about it. I went to a free training on sex trafficking, and the guy who ran it was a sex therapist. So I just looked up what that was and what ASECT was and where to go, and found a supervisor, and she was intrigued because she saw my bio online and saw that I was young. At the time I was 30. And so that's kind of started it.
Well, yeah, I imagine if you're a curious person and you're dealing with relationships, you're going to start going down that sex avenue because there's a lot more interesting things that could go on down that road.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get into your day, because I want to get into more of the couples therapy and the sex therapy thing. And your day-to-day week, do you have like a set get to the office at this time every day, or is it all just
it's not random. So I have set hours. Like I get to the office between 7:30 and 8:30, depending on if I have an 8 o'clock client or a 9 o'clock client.
So that's all about who you schedule when you schedule.
I don't have to be there unless there's a client there. And so most of the time, like next week on my really long day, I start at 7 a.m. because that's when I could put somebody in. And I do that a lot where I overfunction. So if you would look on my hours, I think my hours are like 8 to 4, 9 to 9, 8 to 4, 8 to 4.
Okay. So we have a general idea.
But I work 7 to 6, 7 to 10, 10 to 10. Like it just, I take on a lot of people.
But you're essentially in charge of that. Like
yes.
No one's forcing
I'm in
you
charge.
to take.
Yeah, I'm in charge of that.
All right, good.
Yeah.
So let's start the actual show.
Yeah, sorry. Oh my God.
No, it's good, and that's other people should know. At the recording, you were essentially the person who came up with this with me. We spent a full therapy session workshopping this idea for a podcast.
Yeah.
Because we're both genuinely curious about what people do.
Yeah.
And between the two of us, we know a lot of different weird people that do a lot of different things.
I'm fascinated. I always said that with like Howard Stern. I'm fascinated when he's like, no. How did you get here? And they're like, well, I didn't. No. He's like, no. Which streets did you take? Like, I love that kind of.
Yeah, the little details, and that's like because our general idea was the job, and then it turned into like the Howard Stern like minutia of whatever, and then I brought up that Pete Holmes would bring up things like, what kind of shampoo do you use? So it's just like, I really want to know. Like, I don't, it doesn't matter in my life, but it's super interesting.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's start, with when you wake up. When do you wake up?
So I wake up, I would say my kids have to be on the bus, so I wake up around 6:30. And my husband's like, he's the very typical parent. I'm the, like, I'll hit the snooze button a million times. I know exactly how long I can, I have a calculation in my head. I'm not smart by any realm of anything else, but if you say you have to be at some place at, like, if I know my client's going to be at Shady Side at 8 a.m., I know that I can leave at 7:27. Like, so my mind,
get it down to the minute.
I can get it to the minute. And then my mind will even say, like, your hair's not really greasy. You can use dry shampoo. Like, whatever I need to do in that moment. And most of the time, I'm like, you just get up and take a shower. You'll feel better. But it is eternal. Like, I am not a morning person.
Yeah.
At all. I wish I was. So, like, the 7 a.m. client, I will dread it. But I love work, obviously. Yeah. Like, I love work, and I love getting there. It's just that morning wake up darkness. Like, I do struggle with seasonal affective disorder. So, like, that same, I think everybody in Pittsburgh does. So it's not unique, but just that idea of like, ugh. So I wake up, I play, so I guess it's my ritual. Yeah. I use my phone alarm. I snooze it. I play Candy Crush until it times me out. I don't pay for Candy Crush. I'll play it a couple times. And then it times me out. So then I have to get up and take a shower. I take a shower. I get dressed. I come downstairs. I have coffee. I play more Candy Crush.
Okay.
I watch SpongeBob with the kids. And then I get ready and I usually leave pretty quickly. I'm pretty no fuss. Like I take I shouldn't say I take it seriously, but like at therapy, people aren't there to see me, so I don't dress like a bum. But I don't dress up. I don't wear perfume because I know smells are very sensitive to people. So I try to be aware of those
triggers and stuff there, I bet.
Yeah, I'm not a big makeup person. I try to look presentable. I'm probably portraying it as like I'm this like homeless person, but really,
you're always very professional.
I've just been very. I'm low maintenance, is what I would say.
Yeah,
you know, and I know that I've been pushing that for a while. Where, you know, the joke is like at some point I'm going to have to wear makeup because I'm 40 and you can't go on forever. But I never wanted to be that person that had to wake up and do this whole regimen. I have no desire to do that. I love my bed too much. Mm-hmm. So that kind of helps that. I listen to podcasts on the way into work. If I listen to Stern when I can, but a lot of times it's just too many commercials I listen to them on the app sometimes, but I listen to podcasts on the way in, either like Dax Shepard or Esther Perel's podcast, Where Do We Begin, which is a sex therapy podcast.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes I feel like I don't want to, it's like work, because it's a lot of sessions. It's basically sessions. She's awesome. But I'll listen to those kind of things, or My Dad Wrote a Porno is my all-time favorite. That's in
my list. I haven't listened to it yet.
It is hilarious. And it's just so, it gets you so distracted from your daily ritual. Like for me, it's relevant in a case, but and I use it as examples at work. But it's just very funny and disarming. I don't want to like bog myself down with like I do not watch the news. Mm-hmm. A lot of my clients tell me what's going on in the news, and I'll hear about things, but I can't. I'm so absorbed with so much of other people's emotions that I can't really.
Yeah. And a lot of it's just that fear, just like, here you go, here's some fear on top of whatever you were worried about.
Yeah, exactly. And it's marketed towards you. You know, on Facebook, it's marketed towards me as a liberal. So I see that where it's like, they're going to take away this, you know, and I think, I just want to see puppies and babies. Like, that's all. That's it. And funny pictures and videos. That's really it. So, so that's really, I maybe eat like a half a bagel, or sometimes I'll go to Starbucks for my first client, depending. Like, I have a client on Friday mornings that I try to get her Starbucks every week, because then she's so appreciative of it, but it's selfishly because then I get Starbucks and I get like the eggs or something. So that's really it for those days. And then when I get there, I do all the routine stuff. If you're the first one, if I'm the first one there, but for the most part, like our offices are meant to be like plug and play. Like they're kind of just like a template, and you bring your laptop in, and that's really all you need. And you just get a nice quiet room. You get a nice quiet room. Yeah, there's no personalized. We've gotten some clinicians in the past have bucked at that, where they want like their name on the door or personal pictures. But we don't do any of that stuff, just because... That way it's more like universal, and you can kind of run around. It's more universal, and we always talk about, like, if you're coming in for fertility problems and all you're seeing is pictures of people's family and kids, like, that's not the best. Yeah, it's just... It's not cool. So, that it makes it easier, because you can just come into work and you're, ready to go. Yeah, and I imagine if something pops up, you can be in a different office and it won't really change. Exactly. Okay, that's good. Yeah. So, but there's no secretary who checks people in. So, sometimes the clients are right there waiting for you, or like I look on my schedule. Most of the time I have people that I'd say I see like 35 people a week. We'll say 20 of them are weekly. And then the 15 are either rotating from every other week or every month or every 6 weeks, just as needed. Okay, so let's just run through like a general who you see throughout the day. Like, again, I know you're not allowed to like divulge anyone's personal business. Joe Smith on Tuesday. No. Exactly. Like, what kind of issues are you dealing with on a regular basis? What are some common things that reoccur? Number one, anxiety. Across the board. Okay. Everybody has anxiety. And I think everybody does have anxiety. You have to some extent, yeah. Yeah, you have to have anxiety in order to manage your life in some way or be productive. Like, most people that are productive have anxiety. But if it's inhibiting your life in some negative way, it affects you. So for sex therapy, for example, that's a big question I'll get a lot is, well, is sex therapy covered? The answer is no. Like, technically, insurance will not pay for you to go to sex therapy, but insurance also won't pay for you to go to couples counseling. But they do pay for you to go to family therapy. So it's semantics at some point. And then with, for women who have sexual pain or men who have erectile dysfunction, the first question I'll ask them is, does this cause you anxiety or depression? And they're like, absolutely. Okay, well, those things are covered. So it's just, it's totally above board.
It's just getting the verbiage right.
Exactly.
For where it
exactly.
makes sense.
So I would say the most common thing is anxiety. I see probably 50% of the people I see are couples, or one of a couple where maybe another clinician in the practice sees the other part of the couple.
How common is that? Like, what are the couples versus the separated couples?
When I was first building up ours, I saw a lot of couples and them separately. But now with I don't have the time, so I have to do some farming it out. And our practice is set up to do that. We collaborate a lot with each other. But I'd say I don't know a number. I'd say the couples.
No, just roughly. I don't know.
Yeah, the couples I see. So if I say like 15 or 20 couples a week, of those couples, I see probably half of them where I see both people individually also. And then the other ones, either half of them see somebody else in the practice, and then a quarter of them, they don't see anybody individually, something like that.
And what's the difference in your experience with that? Like, is there just, when you deal with them individually, is there a lot of shit talking, or do you find that there's more invasive conversation when they're together, or how does that work?
Sometimes I've had, now it hasn't happened lately, but in the past I've had couples that cannot sit in a room together without fighting. So I will disallow them from doing couples counseling until they can get to a point where they've vented all their stuff so that they can sit in a room. Because I think the part that people struggle with a lot is they don't get that captive audience until they're in a room like mine. So the room like mine becomes a safe space for one and a horrendously threatening place for the other person. Yeah. So I have to really manage that so it becomes a safe place for both of them. And yeah, individually, sometimes it is about bitching about the other person. And I'll try to reframe it, and say, like, but you still love them, obviously, because you're staying with them, But a lot of them, it's, somebody was asking me recently, like, why people come to therapy. And I said, I'm going to throw a high percentage out there. Like, 75% of my clients come to therapy because somebody else in their life should be in therapy. So they almost come in talking about their spouse or their mom or their mother-in-law. Like, that's a big common thing, is the mother-in-law or the mother. And it's really because they have control issues, or like their spouse has control issues. So then they'll come in and they're like, well, he did this, she did this, blah, 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 blah. And we'll talk about it, what they can do as the client. And it's great, but really the other person needs to be there. In some way. So
because if you're not going to correct that problem, then it's going to continue to be a problem.
I saw a guy recently who he's paying cash because he doesn't even want his wife to know that he's going. And we were talking about, okay, well, like, if this is a sex issue and you want, like, I can't really help you without her here. I can encourage you and get you to be assertive. Like, part of his issue is he needs to be assertive, with his wife. And working on that, but it's a tough thing to do alone. It's when it's a couples issue, it's hard to treat individually. So
imagine it too, if there's a power struggle kind of thing going on, then it's going to be a lot more difficult without both people at least attempting to solve the problem.
Well, also there's this like stigma still. They'll never come to therapy. Like, I hear that a lot. Like, I'm open to what you have, but they're not. Like, I'm some kind of witch or something. Like, no, I'm cool with it, but
there's still a lot of that out there. If my grandpa finds out that I go to therapy, he's just talking trash, and it's like, I don't care.
Your mom or something.
It's very difficult to offend me, so I don't care. But I imagine there's a lot of other people that are like, everyone's gonna judge me. I can't go. I can't let anyone find out about this.
And people will say that about our waiting room. Like, what if I see somebody? I'm like, well, if you see somebody in our waiting room, they're here too. So
yeah, I mean, that's always my theory on it.
Yeah, and I used to get caught up in that because Pittsburgh's a small town, and we see a lot of people that I see a client, then I see the step parent, I see the boss, I see this person, like they'll refer all kinds of people, but then they don't want to see them. And I used to overmanage that a lot. And now I think like, no, this is my schedule. If they fit in and they're back to back and I can't help it that you two used to be friends, but you're not friends. And, it becomes heavy on me to manage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
yeah.
right.
The individual stuff. It is different. I don't know. It's so surprising to me how many people don't have anyone in their life that they can be truly honest with.
Yeah, that's pretty surprising.
Yeah.
I don't quite get that because I've always been very transparent is what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so I don't have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to have secrets because I'm not equipped enough to hide anything about myself. So just put it all out there.
And that's how I am, and I have it's lovely to work with therapists because a bunch of us are just super close, and we talk about everything, and the idea that we have all these people, which it's a big honor, but I had 3 people use the line, no one else in the world except you knows X yesterday to me.
Yeah. And
it's just so like it's this awesome burden, but it's still like it's very, I don't think I'm that special. So, and it's not about me, it's about the place and the...
But there's very much that element there. Like, I was thinking that on the drive over here. I was like, she knows more about me than anybody else in the world. And then I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, no, I got drunk and told my buddies all that anyway. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, as a, sober, middle of the day, honest conversation, you've heard more of anything. So I imagine there's quite a few people that are like that with you. Yeah,
there are. And, I always use, because I am honest and transparent, that I talk freely about myself, and I will joke that HIPAA goes both ways. Like, you can't leave here and be like, my therapist said blah, blah, blah. Which, with individuals, when going back to that, that's what I wanted to say is, the one thing that's an asset when I see people individually and as a couple is that there's no bullshitting. There's nothing lost in translation because I'm the one.
Yeah.
Whereas I was just talking to one of my colleagues yesterday, and we have a couple we share, and I was saying like, well, and this one said this, and she's like, oh, well, that's weird because this one said this, and we're almost like lawyering to each other in we're like not fighting at all. We were just kind of talking, and it's so funny because the words, whatever she says gets completely mixed up before it comes to me, and vice versa.
It's like a game of telephone, and you guys are the lawyers representing each side.
Exactly, and we can't. There's no defending ourselves, so which is fine. So if you come to see me and say, well, my wife and I haven't had sex in 5 years, and I say, oh, let's talk about what's going on. Like maybe there's something contributing to it. Blah blah blah. You could be totally in, and you could walk out of my office and be like, I saw a sex therapist and she said that you're supposed to have sex with me every single day. and really I don't know. Like when you leave my office, I don't know what's going to happen. So
you know how misrepresented you can be.
So sometimes that can be a struggle with when I see teenagers because their parents want to know, and that's as a regular therapist, not a sex therapist, but their parents will desperately want to have control in certain aspects. And by law, I will not and cannot report anything unless they say they want to hurt themselves or somebody else. Yeah. So they can go home and be like, well, Dana said that you're being mean to me. And
what can you do? Really? I mean, whatever.
I mean, I can, we have therapy speak where we can like redirect things and reframe them and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, they can go home and say whatever they want. I do it with my doctor. I can be like, oh, I went to my doctor and they said that, eating bagels every day with extra cream cheese is totally perfect. Like, that's fine for my sugar, whatever. So, that was a bad example. But,
I gotta get your point out. But, okay, let's get, now that we're on food.
Yeah.
Lunch? When are you taking lunch?
So, if I take a lunch to work, I take PB&J.
Okay.
Usually they're in Shady Side is a very expensive part of town.
No doubt.
So one of the places there's chili and you can get for $5. So I'll end up eating like my $5 chili. That's usually my go-to. Sometimes I'll eat like a salad or something, but for the most part, yeah, I'll eat PB&J. On my long days, I might go to lunch with a client or somewhere or something. But there's a smoothie place in Cranberry that is called Pulp, and I'll get.
Nice.
That's what I'll get, a smoothie for lunch sometimes.
I love a good smoothie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, nothing and that's when the new clinicians start, they're always like, is it okay to eat in front of clients? It's like, that's up to them. Like, most clients don't care. I just don't eat, like, peel and eat shrimp or something.
Yeah, don't be gross.
Don't be gross.
Like, I've brought you food before. It's not weird. Like, it doesn't hinder the reason I'm there. I mean, half the time we're talking about movies or podcasts anyway. But yeah, it doesn't affect the gig. No, yeah, and like, if I have vegan or vegetarian clients, I'm not going to sit there and eat beef chili in front of them. Like, I'm aware of those things. I'll eat oatmeal a lot, like, out of cups, But for the most part, eating takes, so it's not that long. So, I'll do that in between sessions if I really need to, or just eat snacks during the day. Yeah, is it something you take a break for, or you just kind of like fit it in where you fit it in?
I fit it in where I fit it in.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not worth the money for me to block off time. And usually the times people want to eat, like at noon or 4, those are really busy times.
Yeah.
So I would rather take 5 minutes to eat and then,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Have a shake or something like that. But
all right, now on the days where you're super busy, what do you say, 7 to 10?
The longest? Traditionally is 8 a.m. till 10 p.m.
Okay.
It's every Tuesday. And then sometimes it's 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. But yeah, mostly 8.
Okay, now getting through a day like that, you just genuinely enjoy the job that much that you don't get bothered by seeing that many people in a day? Or, like, I'm trying to get inside your head of the motivation of how you get through a dirge of a day like that.
So, it's funny, I always tell people, to me it's like Netflix. It's like binge watching something, except it's like binge watching every show. So, one might be a comedy, one might be a drama, one might be an action thriller. If I saw all depressed clients, it would be horribly draining.
Yeah.
If I saw all anxious clients or all ADHD clients, like, that's exhausting. All couples, forget it. I seem to have a nice mix. Even like like, if I would see a lot of sex couples or sex therapy issues in a day, those are higher anxiety people traditionally. So if it takes a little bit more energy. But yeah, it really varies. And I will deliberately, like, when I look at my schedule and I get demands for people, I see people when they're in crisis too. Like, so I'll make time for people.
Yeah, but it's in your head though, so you can, like, program the schedule.
Yes. Pretty much. I try to, like, in the evening inevitably might work out where there's more couples because that's when people are both off work.
Yeah.
But for me, I have some standing, like, evening clients that are individuals that I will keep in that slots to mix up with the couples. But really I'm fascinated by my job. So I want to know what happened since last week when I tuned in.
Yeah.
So that and something I told them I would share, in some aspect, but, like, I have a couple who had an unconsummated marriage because her sexual pain was so bad. She couldn't even put a tampon. It was terrible. And they came in and they waited for a couple minutes and then they're like, well, you tell her. And I was like, uh-oh, what happened? They're like, we had sex. And I was ecstatic. Like,
it's exciting.
Jumping up. Like, I was just so happy for them because it was so, like, it was something they wanted so bad. And I love that. Like, I love celebrating the good aspects with my clients or their celebrations, and then I mourn their losses with them too. So it's draining and it's exhausting, but I've always been like I'd rather load it very heavy and then relax the next day and kind of get through it. So, Tuesdays is a joke in our house that, like, I've been gone 1/7 of my kids' lives because come hell or high water, I am at work on Tuesdays. Except now I was just telling one of my clients yesterday, I was like, Christmas and New Year's are on Tuesdays this year. So I don't know what I'm going to do because I only take off like one Tuesday a year when we're on vacation. But for the most part, I like that. I I don't dread Tuesdays at all.
But are you guys open on
No.
Thursdays?
No. And I won't see anybody. I'll probably like bounce it around, but I'm such a structured person that feeling like a bunch of it throws that kind of stuff I do not recover well from. Like I will have, I mean, it's October and I'm already planning that because that's a source of my anxiety, is that routine, because not just my routine, but everybody else's routine. Because I have clients I see every single week, and if I can't see them for 2 weeks, for a 3-week stretch, that's a lot. Especially around the holidays, because that's when people are the most stressed. A
lot of issues. Is that common, seeing someone every week?
Yeah. I think it varies by insurance and their copays. Like if you're paying a $5 to $10 copay or no copay, you're more apt to come every week or twice a week. Whereas, if you're paying $50 to $100, that's a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So are there certain issues that you're very excited to deal with versus some type of client that you really dread having to see?
Well, I'm a breast cancer survivor, so I love dealing with survivors. I feel bad, obviously, but I feel like I'm a unique entity.
Yeah, you're in the club.
Yeah, I'm in the club. So that helps me. I do, I love sexual, like, stigma issues or people that are outliers of society, like the BDSM community or polyamorous relationships. Again, selfishly, it's fascinating. So I love that part of it, and I love to get into it and understand. Yeah. But also, like I met a new client who found me somewhere and on the web or something, and I dropped just some basic terms, and she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy I don't have to educate you on this stuff."
Explain.
Yes.
And
and I just love that. Like, I love working with sex positive people. I love working with college students, because I think, if anybody's at the heart of like evolution of the world, it's college students. So they're just so awesome and so knowledgeable, and just very interested in therapy. And it's again, this, like, the stigma is gone with them. Yeah,
it's all starting to just become normal. And
they all talk about their therapist to everybody. My therapist said this. So I do love that. But yeah, those I think, like, the one of my clients always refers to, in the BDSM community, she'll say, like, the island of lost toys. Mm-hmm. Those are the people I love. Like, I love when people feel like outliers or misfits in society, and then they come in, and I'm interested and supportive, and if they're different than me, I love that. Depressed people that are like that idea of like Eeyore, mm-hmm. Those are tough ones for me, because I'm obviously, like, I talk, I'm an anxious person. So people that are very quiet or very slow, it's good for me. It's a good training, because I need to use silence sometimes. But it's just not my same thought process. So it's a challenge. But I think a lot of time very depressed people are a challenge for every therapist, because...
Yeah. Is there like a through line with those type of people? Do they all have something in common with that level of depression? Because I've obviously met people like that. But I mean, is there something that works for that, to help that personality?
It's very slow change. So I had a client one time who I saw twice a week. He was super depressed, and it took about a year for him to even wrap his head around the idea of medication. And this was with me, like, I can't prescribe medication, but me trying to encourage him to get to a psychiatrist. Yeah. And so my belief, just like a lot of therapists, is meeting them where they are. So even though the first 2 weeks I was like, "Oh, dude, you need medication. Oh, you need meds. You need meds. You need meds." I didn't say that. I just met him where he was like, sat with him and would listen to him. And then I remember it was on this huge turning point, because after a year, he opened up to the idea. A year and a half, he started taking medication. Then within, a year of that, he was back. He was working, because he was unemployed out of college, and he was working, and he got a job. And it was awesome to see that change and to be there for that change. It was long. and it was hard.
But the
to
payoff's
see
got to
somebody.
be
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Having to do that for so long.
Yes, and just for him, because I think it's hard. Like anybody, you see somebody's potential, and you want to just be like, "Oh, this is easy. I know what you can do," but that's not my job. My job is to say like, "What's going on? Where do you want to be? How can I get you there?"
Yeah.
So, or use me to help you. You know, that's so it's rewarding, but it is, you know, those ones. Some in couples, sometimes you have people that are in couples that you know. They either shouldn't be together or it's diminishing returns. But my job is not to say, oh, you know, you should get divorced, because that's not about me. If they want to stay with that person.
But I imagine there's certain people that it's like, it's obvious this is not going to work out long term, and you have to see them anyway.
Yeah.
So what's your thought process in there? Like, how do you handle that?
When they don't want to, what do you mean?
When they like are obviously not a good match, like they cannot sustain a relationship.
Oh yeah.
The way that they are, and well, it's apparent they need to get a divorce, but you can't say that obviously.
Yeah. So my line is always, "How's this working for you?" So I keep going back to, well, how's this working for you? What is your goal? Because a lot of times I will leave and think, oh, they shouldn't be together, or how are they doing this? And that's sometimes what I'll say is I just, I go home and I think, how are you doing this every day? This seems like a struggle for the two of you. Or the other line I'll use is, I'm working harder for your marriage than you are. And that and that works a lot of times is, why am you're in or they're coming from, say they drive an hour to get to me, an hour in therapy and an hour to drive back. So you're spending 3 hours on a stranger, basically to pay a stranger to talk about your marriage. And then you're spending all those hours when you get home not doing anything that we talk about.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to fire them and say this is not helpful, but I will say, what do you want out of this?
Yeah, what's the end?
Yeah, and I use a ton of analogies, like a lot of us do. And I always use couples therapy. The analogy is Weight Watchers. Like, you go into Weight Watchers, talk about what you should eat, you get on the scale, and if you walk out of a meeting and get a milkshake and a basket of wings,
then
what's the point?
Exactly.
So I understand I would never kick somebody out of Weight Watchers. I'd be like, okay,
come on down.
Keep coming back. It's like AA, just keep coming back. So that's kind of my mentality.
So advice for someone who wants to kind of go down this avenue.
To be a therapist?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we need more people. We need people that are curious. We need people that are relatable and supportive. That are sex positive, especially in this right now. I think that the world is becoming very anxiety provoking. Social media has created a ton of anxiety.
I think it's dividing a lot of people.
It's polarizing.
It's causing a lot of problems.
It's polarizing couples. It's polarizing families. All of those things. So to have somebody that's unbiased, that you can dump all these things onto and then just leave is glorious. So if you can go to school and look into it, there's a lot of different options. The world needs us. So that's what I would say. And you don't have to be, again, like I was not a perfect student. I almost failed out of undergrad. I actually graduated, magna cum, summa cum laude in graduate school. But, you just have to be curious. You have to be interested in, to get your license and to do all this stuff. It is a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get through the firewalls that exist. Yeah. But it's worth it. And to be a contractor, like for me, it's great because I can, miss when I need to miss for the kids, and I can make up hours and all of those things. It's really great. And talking about where I came from compared to now, like I get to work with normal people, or typical people, I should say. Normal's a dirty word, but typical people with typical problems, and then ones that have really severe problems. So I get a spectrum. I'm not in a box I'm not married to certain levels of people.
Yeah, you get a nice
So
nice
it's very
spread.
and the reason we talked about this whole podcast in the beginning is I just love hearing about people's jobs too.
Yeah.
Because jobs, that's another thing is like, it's amazing to me when people come to me who are doctors or lawyers or whatever, like I have a lot of professors that will come to me and they ask me work questions, and I think, you're a PhD in physics, like why are you asking me but really it's just basic human communication questions that they're asking, like how do I approach this at work, how do I approach this, and I just I get kind of geeked out by it, and then I have to like settle that down and say like, oh, let me think. And I just love that. It gives me permission to help somebody. So it's kind of like I get to get paid for something that I just honestly love doing. So if you're like as much as a geek like that, then it's great. Some people, I mean, my husband thinks my job is a nightmare. Like he could never do it. He's an introvert. He does not understand why I would ever want to do this.
I mean, I imagine it takes a certain kind of personality.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm here interviewing you for this for absolutely no money. I'm just genuinely curious about people's jobs.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think that's pretty solid advice. Do you have any stories you want to add? Anything you want to just pepper in there at the end?
I'm trying to think.
Just something that comes to mind. Something you tell.
I always tell people whenever people ask for stories, I do like a slot machine of. I mix the location, the gender, and the problem up so that it's
as vague as possible.
But I have. I'm trying to think. Like I was trying to think if I should do like a sex story or a couple story. One of the things that's interesting is I get to like educate people on like different things I hear about. So like sex clubs and different things like that. Yeah. But the one story I'll tell that this is funny is because it's old enough and I think that everything's good, is that I had a client who his partner broke up with him very quickly and she was devastated. So she came in her jammies and she was just crying and she said, I just wish there was like a rebound website or something. And I said, oh yeah, like Ashley Madison. And I just said it just like that. And she's like, what was that? And I said, nothing. No, nothing. Don't know. Just something I heard is stupid. She comes back the next week. She said, oh, I joined Ashley Madison and I had sex with 5 guys last week.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, I didn't say that. She said, oh, no, it wasn't for you. But it helped me feel like a rebound. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's, I've had fetish people that you would see in a store and you would never think there was anything about them that have brought me like props. So my husband loves to tell the story of this guy who brought me a body bag and a bunch of other mummification kind of kinky stuff. And he told me, take as many pictures as you want. So I did that and it was really cool and that idea. But then he leaves with this duffel bag and you'd be like, hey, there's your average grandpa leaving work, So, like, those kind of things, and I was showing pictures to my one client last night of this, a sex club in Pittsburgh, and, like, those kind of things that are just fascinating.
Yeah.
And then I've just had, like, I was thinking of that, like, oh, he's going to ask me for a story, and I...
You don't have to give one. I'm just trying
but there's just a lot. I have, like, a lot of anecdotes. Like, I do a lot of... That's one of the, again, like, what works is I've seen so many clients, so a lot of times I'll just... give stories of other clients to clients, like I've had this and this has worked.
Yeah.
I don't have the, like, I know I have people that were like ER physicians that they'll say like, oh, I pulled this thing out of somebody's butt or whatever. I did have a client who went to a haunted house recently and she gave me permission. She told me to tell this story. She had medicinal marijuana in her bag and she was so afraid because they do bag checks there that she was so worried about her medicinal marijuana that she forgot that she had a butt plug in her bag also.
Yeah.
So when they went through her bag, luckily they didn't find it. But she thought, she came in, she's like, I was so worried about the medicinal marijuana that I totally forgot to tell them that I have a butt plug and they probably had no idea what it was. Yeah.
Or maybe they did.
Or maybe they did. Yeah, they just didn't care. Who knows? Yeah. But yeah, there's like those kind of little ones. But yeah.
No,
I know.
Good.
I'm sure my kids would be like, did you tell them this one? Like, they know.
Well, that's the other thing I've been doing lately because I've been getting a lot of people reaching out to me like after I post episodes and they're like, can we do like a follow-up where I talk about this? And so there's always that. Yeah. So let's get into some of the fun stuff.
Okay.
Let's see. said breakfast. You're usually a bagel
Yeah,
person,
yeah.
right? That covers that. What's your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is being embarrassed, I think, or being found out. Like, I have a nice dose of imposter syndrome.
Oh, okay.
So I am very transparent. Like, I'll tell clients, a guy had a client recently who's a MD, and I had said, I'm just intimidated because I didn't go to Harvard or Yale. Like, I have a lot of clients that went to Ivy League schools.
Yeah.
I see a lot of CMU people. So, like, that is probably, like, my biggest fear is being found out in some way or just being discredited. And not that I'm in a position to be discredited, but just that...
But it seems like something that would be in the back of your head.
Yeah, because I'm a poor kid. Not poor, but, like, I grew up in a blue-collar town and wasn't fancy education and, didn't have all those things. And every once in a while, a client will say something like, that they're like, oh, is that your Land Rover outside? What are you talking about, Land Rover? That kind of stuff where I just think, oh, I'm not as good as that. So I do have that. And I don't know if it's probably like I have some classism,
Yeah.
where I don't want to be like a douchebag, and that's my biggest fear is being that way. So,
well, I think you got a nice dose of the full spectrum in your job history.
Yeah.
What movie do you think you've seen the most?
The movie I've seen the most is Stuck on You, I think. That, I don't know why. I've watched it so many times.
No, that's why I love to ask that question.
It's a random one. That or Groundhog Day, because I, like, absolutely love it, and I can't not watch it. I always love to say I want to sound, like, educated and say, like, oh, I really love The English Patient.
Well, that's why I ask what you've seen the most and not what's your favorite movie.
Yeah, and really, like, Empire Strikes Back is, my favorite, but I don't know if that's true anymore.
Exactly.
But honestly,
people think about it too much.
But Stuck on You, I don't know what it was. I had postpartum blues. I had prepartum blues. Like, when I was pregnant, I had a lot of, like, anxiety and fear. And for some reason, that movie just kept it, like, distracting enough.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, in as a TV show, I watch The Office over and over again. And that's something... Parks and Rec and The Office, I just kind of go through them. And there's something, like, safe and predictable, and I don't know. It's kind of like that. But yeah, Stuck on You, I love that.
Good answer.
Yeah.
What's the best advice you ever got?
My mother told me, I remember, I'm a people pleaser, and I remember coming home from school one day when I was like in my daughter's age, and I was like, why doesn't this person like me? And she said, you know what? Some people are just assholes. And it's not like again, it's not some big piece of advice, but I think that a lot, where I'm like, some people are just assholes. Like,
exactly.
And why do I want to impress an asshole? They're assholes.
Exactly.
So, like that,
Yeah, there's no winning some people over. You just gotta...
And my mom
assholes.
probably doesn't even remember saying that to me. But it was just it was one of those moments where it was like, she was probably so exhausted to say something, like, wise, that she was like, some people are just assholes. And I was like, oh, okay.
And something like that can be that profound.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. You have a favorite candy? You have any candy in the world? You get one. What are you getting?
Cadbury Dairy Milk is the best thing ever.
All right. Very specific.
Yeah.
Do you have a childhood hero?
Childhood hero. I wrote to Bill Clinton when I was a kid.
Did you get a response?
I did. My dad claims that it was really not him because he was not a Clinton fan, but no, not one that, like, really went in my mind. I remember when my mom was sick. My mom had cancer 3 times. And when the second time she had cancer, she had bone cancer, and it was really bad, and she was in the hospital for a lot of the times. So I'd go to the guidance counselor, and that was kind of my first peek into, like, therapy.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I love this. I want to do this. Like, I want to be someone that helps people. So just that, like, it hasn't been one figure, it's been multiple kind of figures.
But that works. Yeah. What kind of soap do you use?
Irish Spring.
Okay.
Usually.
That's good. If you could give your 18-year-old self $1,000, what do you think she'd do with it?
I think she would probably buy everybody beer and dinner, because that's what I would do in college. I was the kid who would get a credit card and buy everybody dinner because it was free money.
Yeah.
And then take like $3 from everybody just because I was an idiot. So that's what I would do. Even now, like my husband and I always get into speculation fights about money. Mm-hmm. So if we win the lottery, I always think like I would get an all-inclusive resort and bring everybody I know there for like a month.
Yeah.
He does not like that.
What would he do?
He would invest it or do something boring. Like he would still travel or do something. Like he would buy property and exciting stuff. I don't care. Like I care about those things obviously, but I just want to have fun with people. Like that would be my
Well, let's dial it back a little bit, and let's just say you get $1,000 right now, as you can't really get everyone to a resort or anything with $1,000, but it's $1,000, and you have it. You just do whatever you want with it. What would you do?
I'd be like, let's all go out to Mad Max. I'd have 20 people at Mad Max, endless drinks, whatever. Like, it's not even endless drinks for $1,000, but
but I like it. I like it. Spicy, not spicy?
Spicy.
Spicy. All right. What's the hardest time you ever laughed?
The hardest time.
This is another one I stole from Pete Holmes. I just really love this. I love this question.
I'm trying to. I've laughed and peed myself in the recent last 6 months. I'm trying to think when I laughed. I was leaving grad school one time with my friends, who's not a therapist now, and we were walking out. And it was like winter, and she did one of those comic book falls. Like she flew up into the air and fell flat on her face. And as soon as I knew she was okay, I just stood there just dying. I was dying. And then people were walking by, and I'm like, did you see that? Did you see that? Like, because it was just like that. I remember that being like a distinct folly that I totally laughed at. Mm-hmm. Other times, my husband and I have just we've either said something or the kids have said something that's mean or funny, and we just laugh a lot.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
Yeah.
But that's good. That's very good. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
I hope I'm still alive, because I'm a cancer survivor, so that's always it's a morbid truth, but that is the truth. And I hope that we'll be traveling more, because our kids will be in college by then. Okay. So that would be my goal, is to own 2 of the practices I work at.
Okay. So those are pretty solid goals.
Pretty solid goals.
I like that. What kind of toothpaste do you use?
Sensodyne, because I get ulcers from other.
Okay. What's something you wish you learned earlier?
I wish I learned to study and actually pay attention, those kind of skills that I did not learn at Shaler. Yeah. So just being, because I would have been a better student. Maybe, not that I regret going to Pitt, I love Pitt, but that kind of, I think I would have had better help and better grades, and wouldn't have struggled as much as I struggled.
Yeah, it would be helpful.
Yeah.
You have a cocktail preference?
Gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic. Classic. Yeah. Can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
Anything you would change about yourself?
I wish I wasn't so worried about what people thought of me, or that if people like me. I'm a FOMO. One of my colleagues who's under 30 diagnosed me as a FOMO, and as soon as I heard that, and I obviously didn't know what it was at first, then I looked it up and I was like, that's me. That's the diagnosis. I look at Facebook pictures of my friends with other friends, and I'm jealous.
I think that's a legitimate thing for a lot of people.
That's a lot of people, and I just wish that my core wasn't I intellectually know it's stupid and I shouldn't be jealous and I should be happy, and I am, but I wish that my first instinct wasn't aw. Yeah. That kind of missing out. I wish I didn't feel that way.
No, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you could do anything for a living, what would you do? Literally anything. You'd snap your fingers and be that tomorrow.
Honestly, I really love what I do. I'd love to not deal with insurance. So, But I'd love to. Well, I guess I'd love to be a fly on the wall, but that's not really a living. I think I'd like to be a psychiatrist. Like if I could really, I'd love that. The medical part and the therapy part, not just like prescribing meds, but that's I've always been fascinated with that, like the neuroscience part of it, and yeah.
All right, sounds pretty fascinating. Yeah. Well, I mean that wraps it up.
Okay.
Thanks for doing this.
Thanks.
That's all right.